Okay, cool. And then Brielle, I just heard you talk, so I think we're good. Um, Maybe just wait a few more minutes, well, like a minute or two. We can start. Uh, Man. So, just so everyone knows, I today I felt like a true adult, even though I've been an adult for a while. I I ordered some sole replacements for my slippers, and got a mail today, and I was extremely happy. And then I noticed like I'm way too happy for these new slipper inserts. But such is life. Just like that meme
Yeah.
where, yeah, I think someone on Twitter, one of those things shared, it was like, uh, no one tells you that as an adult you spend most of your time doing laundry.
Yeah,
I,
seriously.
I felt that way.
That's like my biggest fear of ever having kids is like I can't even handle doing my own laundry, let alone someone else's.
Yeah, and you have to fold it too. You can get
Yeah.
away
Oh
not
man,
folding
that's the
yours.
worst part.
All right, I think we can kick this off. So just so everyone knows in the audience, this is how I'm thinking we can run the session. So, we're just going to talk about our journeys during and the startups that we're in, and then we're going to open it to questions here and there. Obviously, if you'd really like to ask a question in the middle of the conversation, you can just raise your hand. I don't have the participant view in front of me, but I'm pretty sure there's a button that lets you raise your hand, and then we'll just let you in as a speaker, and you can ask your question. If you would prefer to DM it, you can definitely DM me or Elaine or Brielle, whoever, and more than happy to take that question. It just might take us a little longer because we might not notice it. All right, with that said, I just want to welcome everybody to Startup Talk. With me today is Brielle Nickoloff and Elaine Anzaldo. I am the Director of Product Management at Analyticsai. And Brielle and Elaine, please introduce yourselves.
So I am the head of product at Botmock, and I'm also a co-founder. And Elaine, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Elaine. I'm a conversational UX designer and I work at MLX, which is the same company as Fadi.
Yay!
Hey, we're repping MLX today.
Yeah, well, so the the way we all met each other was through, obviously Elaine and I work at the same company, but the reason that one of the ways the way I met Brielle was because she is like she said, the co-founder of Botmock, which is a conversational design company, and NLX is a conversational design platform. So that's the interconnection there. We both work for startups. The only difference here is Brielle is a co-founder. So with that said, Brielle and Lane, why did you guys essentially choose conversation design as part of your career? Brielle, you can go first.
Sure. So I have always loved linguistics. I studied linguistics in college and always kind of was wishfully hoping that I could build a career somehow related to it, but never, saw a clear path as to how. Um, and so I actually spent the 4 years of my college studying pre-med.
No way.
Yeah, intending to take the MCAT and all that stuff. And linguistics started as a minor, and then eventually I had just taken so many credits that it like automatically turned into a major. Um, and at some point I was just like, after graduation, thinking to myself, I don't want to do this whole doctor thing, honestly. I love linguistics. Like, I love thinking about it. I could talk about it all day, but it never seemed viable, to make money because we really hadn't ever like learned about career paths in the Ling department. So I had a friend actually who had gone to design school for 4 years, and she ended up at Snapchat as a designer, and she was trying to like nudge me into, you know, becoming a computational linguist or something like that. She did her best to convince me that there were paths out there that linguists could take, especially in tech now. And so after graduating, I really reached out to hundreds of people, asking them, hey, you're a linguist at Google. Like, how'd you get to where you are? What do you do? And this kind of led me to connect with people that were in conversation design, and it it like slowly dawned on me that I could utilize like my creativity and my just like absolute love of listening to people converse, thinking about how people talk, and kind of merging those two things together, the creative side and the linguistic side, into conversation design. And so that's, yeah, kind of like how I got to, you know, how I've sort of built my career in this space.
And actually, can one of you describe to the audience what conversation design is? I
Yeah.
realize we didn't define that.
I'd love to hear Elaine's definition, but in my opinion, conversation design is the way I usually like explain it to anyone who has never heard of it is, you have a team in any company of designers who create visual interfaces like a website or a mobile app. They're the ones who think about the user's interaction with, clicking the buttons and getting to different pages on that app or that site. So conversation designers are kind of rooted in the same sort of discipline, but it's very different since it's not a visual interface most of the time. I mean, chatbots are a visual interface, but you're more thinking about the gears and like the the way that the system will actually speak to the user and the way the user will speak to the system. Mm-hmm. So broadly, I consider, voice interfaces like Alexa and Google Assistant and chat interfaces like chatbots to be the two main categories of, interfaces that conversation designers design for.
Yeah, definitely. Elaine?
Yeah, so I guess for me, like I like thinking about it in like really simple terms. So the way I described it to my dentist the other day, like, oh, what do you do for work? And I was like, I'm a conversation designer. Well, what does that mean? So my immediate example is always like, oh, Siri or Alexa, like it's kind of like, thinking about the dialogue that goes in that and what kind of questions to ask and kind of like how the conversation goes as a whole. But I guess like my more official definition, which is kind of funny that we're talking about it because I just got asked this today. It's like it's basically UX-based role focused on improving the end user experience for conversational applications. So that could be anything related to voice. So if you think about calling a phone number and you hear like this automated voice talking back at you, so you consider those part of conversation design, or just like chatbots on a website, on an app, or if we think about like the big smart home assistants like Siri or anything on your phone, really. So it could be any of those things, but conversation design is mostly looking a little bit beyond the logic. So it's not being a chatbot developer. You don't have to know coding or be like a full NLP expert to really work in it or kind of like make scripts. You essentially just think beyond the logic and you get a little bit more creative.
So you said all that while the dentist was operating on your mouth, right? Because that's what my dentist does.
Exactly. Like yeah. She was like, oh, what do you do? And I just went on this like 20-minute ramble of exactly what it is. No.
No, my dentist has a habit of asking me questions while he's got like seven of those tools in my mouth, and I'm just like, all right, yeah. And he seems to understand, so I don't know. He must get practice. But Yeah, and actually, Elaine, we didn't touch upon this, but how did you decide to make conversation design your career? Because just so everyone
Hmm.
knows, there's no conversation design major, at least not directly, as far as I know. So, how did you decide to do that as a career?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of funny. It's kind of similar to Brielle. I was a bio major in college, and I kind of started the opposite. I entered college thinking I would do something more humanities based. I was actually a Spanish major declared when I entered, and I was taking all these like language courses. And it just didn't seem fun to me, so I just went more to like the STEM route and did like bio stuff and research. But while I was doing my degree, I actually worked freelance and I was hired by the university to work as a Spanish translator and interpreter. So I dealt with language directly and kind of communication of different people, like different topics, like constantly. So that was my first exposure to something more like linguistic based that wasn't directly like, studying linguistics. Um, and after graduating, I got really interested in it. I got really invested in like, okay, like there's more to language than just probably being a medical interpreter or being that person who's just like in court. And I really found out about all different kinds of careers with language and technology when I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. That's when I really got exposed to what other kind of roles there are in tech, and it's not just the things that you can major in. And started off as a localization specialist, and eventually I made my way to the teams of Siri at Apple, and I also worked at SRI International, which if people don't know, that's basically where Siri was born. Nuance also came out of SRI. So I work specifically in their speech labs, and it was really cool work because I basically got to use my language skills for something that would eventually help a lot of people. Because the project that I worked on was basically like improving the automatic speech recognition against noise. So if you ever tried to talk to your phone or voice assistant and it didn't understand you because it's too noisy, so essentially I was working on that kind of project to kind of help that model, that NLP model, just like understand people better. And that's really how I first got exposed to voice technology, and I got super interested in it. And found out there was something called conversation designer that didn't require me to go back to school essentially. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. It's exactly like the same kind of skill set that I already had, like analyzing data, seeing like how people interact with your chatbot and kind of seeing those metrics there. It's like really touching base of like everything I learned in biology and analyzing data, but also like the creative side and thinking about language and being a bridge between the user and the chatbot. So, I mean, that's how I got interested.
Absolutely, that makes a ton of sense. And now we're lucky to have you at Analytics. So there we
Yay!
go.
Thank you.
That's only the beginning of the journey, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of beginning of journeys, Brielle, out of the three of us here, you're a actual founder. So here's kind of the $1 million question: is how did you get the guts to start your own company? Because I'm sure you had to. There was an opportunity cost, right? You could go full-time job at a big company, all nice and comfortable, or you could set out and do something on your own. So how did you make that decision?
Yeah, so let's see. When I met Obaid for the first time, my co-founder, it was really clear to me that, you know, we just had like, good vibes. Like the chemistry was there. Um, but we only really chatted like once in real life at a conference, and I was an early user of his product actually. So like he and I didn't start it together from day one. He started it, and I was at a different startup actually. So when I was looking for my next gig, after that first startup. The reason Botmock was interesting to me is because it really aligned with kind of my entire mission to empower people like linguists, non-technical people, kind of just like what Elaine was mentioning, to create stuff that didn't require them to go back to school for anything or didn't require them to learn how to code. So to me, like, it became pretty clear that a tool like Botmock, a no-code tool that could enable someone to design a conversation, would, you know, A, make me excited to go to work every day, and B, was something I like completely believed in that would change our industry as a whole. So when I joined Botmock, I actually just joined as like a product lead. And then over the course of working with Obeid for a few months, we like mutually realized that our complementary skill set made a lot of sense to become co-founders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was not like a decision from day one, but after working with the team, after seeing how the product is, so useful for our customers, there was just like a couple of different things that built up to make me decide that, yeah, even though, I could be somewhere else, even though there's an opportunity cost of, going to some like FANG company or what have you, I really want to be here and see this through and, build this for our customers.
Yeah, no, that's I don't know, that's kind of that's an interesting background because I didn't know that actually, so this is kind of news to me. I appreciate you sharing that. I think there's someone that raised their hands. I believe Sharon. Sharon, if you want to come back up to ask your question, please feel free to raise your hand, and I can make you speaker. Okay. Well, if you still feel like it later, please let us know. Anyone else wants to ask Brielle or Elaine a question, please feel free. In the meantime, Elaine, when you decided to change your career path, you just mentioned that you were thinking of doing linguistics or doing translation in core or whatever it might be. I'm sure you ran across several different companies, especially in the Bay Area. I feel like you can't walk 2 feet without talking to somebody who's part of a startup and is probably looking for funding.
Yeah.
What made you what made you choose Analytics? And I know this for a fact, right? I know you were looking for a job in the middle of the pandemic as well.
Mhm.
So how did you find Analytics and how did you choose Analytics?
Yeah, so I spent about a year preparing for my career transition. Like I worked at SRI, and I was there for a couple months, and then I transitioned to other projects. But I was doing some courses on my own time and trying to like find out more about the field, like talking to a ton of people. So basically, end of 2020, I had like done a lot of studies. I actually entered a design competition that Botmock co-hosted with voice devs, and my team placed like third in that. And I was like feeling really, really hype about this career. And I decided to enroll into like a certification course. So by the time my certification course was winding down, I was like, okay, I got to start looking for jobs now. I think this is the right time. So basically, like how to look for jobs as a conversation designer, because I know a lot of people still don't know what it is, and a lot of opportunities, like if you look on LinkedIn or Indeed, are actually targeted toward more UX designers. Like it's really, really hard to find just like a simple job description that just has like conversation designer and you know exactly what they're looking for. So the way that I found about NLX was actually through like a mutual connection. So I'm part of this networking group called Women in Voice. And so what I did is like I would go to all the events, I would connect with all of the professionals in the network, and just like one day, I guess out of the blue, I saw this message on Slack saying like, "Hey, I might know about a job opening soon. If you're interested, send me your resume." And I was like literally like 2 minutes after that message got sent, I just sent the person my resume like immediately. I didn't even think about it. And about like a few days later, she got back to me and she was like, "Oh, like the job is actually for this startup called Analyticsai. Like, do you want to just like talk about what you would be doing and like what the company is?" And I was like, "Sure." Um, so essentially, like long story short, from the time that I like sent my resume out and the time I got the job offer was like 2.5 weeks. So it was like a pretty short time to make a decision, but I was like already in the middle of like applying to a lot of companies. And the reason why NLX stood out to me is like I really believed in the technology. You hear a lot about like smart home assistants like Alexa and Siri and all of these big people like Google Assistant. But I feel like there's still some things that maybe larger companies don't get right or don't have like a lot of energy to pursue, especially in terms of like multimodal design, which is what NLX kind of like started working on when I was applying to the company. And I really, really loved um, the voice compass demo that I took before actually speaking to the co-founders and the CEO. I was like super impressed. I was like, here's a product that has an experience that's not just voice, it's not just like chat, it's like combines different senses. It like really engages your attention in a way that other products don't do really well. And I really like the attention to like not just making like the voice sound great, but also the visuals were like really, really sleek. So that's part of it. And then also like interviewing for conversation design roles, a lot of jobs look for super senior people, or at least the job descriptions say like minimum 5 years of experience. And me, like I didn't have that, and I wasn't like, oh, what are you looking for then? Like hardly any people are applying to these jobs anyway. But I really like the interview experience with NLX. Like being honest, like it was really nice. There was like a mutual level of trust, I feel like. And, you know, when I was showing my portfolio, when I was talking about why I wanted to go into conversation design, I felt like it was more of a casual conversation rather than like, you know, this like little dance that other companies like to do of like, ooh, I don't know if we're interested. Like, let's be really vague about everything. So that's kind of what stood out.
Yeah, and in a way, I'm sure you had to stand out as well. I mean, what would you, and this is for either of you, this question, is that what advice would you give to junior designers or anybody really who's trying to gain experience in the field, but there's always, yeah, those disclaimers, 5 years of experience, 6 years of experience, 10 years of experience for something that might not even be 4 years old, right? Because sometimes the job poster is not necessarily the hiring manager, and that's where some big disconnect happens. How do you stand out in those situations as someone who's more junior?
Yeah, in my opinion, it's all about showcasing your work. I think having a portfolio is the first step, and not just showing off your designs, but really walking through your entire thought process, how you solved a problem. That's what really resonates with people, hiring
Mm-hmm.
managers, recruiters. And then the other thing is what's worked for me is finding smaller companies, like working at startups to gain a lot of different skills, finding people that are accessible on LinkedIn. I mean, if you ping 50 people on LinkedIn, ask them to chat, 15 might get back to you and you might have a good connection with five. So it's really just a numbers game in terms of networking with people and, um, finding a job, which again, I've never found a job through a traditional source like a job portal. It's only ever been through people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same experience for me. When I was looking for a conversation design role, I was like super intentional about it. I actually only applied to like less than 20 companies, and they were all like I found them all either through an event, through a person, through like a recruiter that I already had a relationship with. So I was really, really picky about what companies I was applying to, making sure that there was like a good fit on both sides. And I guess like again, like if you want to stand out as a junior designer, it's not always about like what you know, like your hard skills. It's also about like how you talk about what you know. I feel like a lot of people just assume like, oh, I have like 3 projects on my portfolio. That means I'm super ready to apply to jobs. But actually, that interview is a big part of the process, and you should feel confident about what you're talking about. And I feel like sometimes people lose opportunities because they're not able to communicate their ideas clearly through the interview process itself. And especially with conversation design, like how you communicate in an interview, like really reflects on your day to day as a conversation designer and when you're talking to a lot of people who don't know what you do. So I definitely think that that's something to work on. Like definitely like be able to like talk about your work, talk about your entire design process and find ways to like um, convey your ideas clearly.
Yeah, that's so true. Actually, you made me think about Steph, the product designer we were interviewing just the other day, and
Yeah.
she was pretty junior, pretty green at least in terms of her product design experience, but she was able to communicate her skills and her thought process
Hmm.
in such an articulate way that it didn't matter. Like I was, we were, right? We were okay with giving it a
Hmm.
shot.
Yeah.
Obviously still has to go through the interview process with us, but it was very evident that she would be someone that would be of added value where is she to make it on the team, and I think that was the important part, especially with someone junior like that, because her
Hmm.
portfolio wasn't complete either.
Hmm.
We're primarily web. We don't really have an app, and our portfolio was all apps except like one small project. So it's like more about how you think about things, not as much as having a big portfolio. Because you can have a big portfolio, but if you don't really think in terms of what problem you're solving, and that's actually something I'm going to ask you about, Brielle, here in a second. But if you don't think about what problem you're trying to solve, and you're just kind of pumping out essentially outputs, so just features for the sake of it, then you're not necessarily going to be in a situation that you're going to be successful in the long run. It might work on the short term, but I don't know. I've never seen it work on the long run. Uh, so with that said, actually, Brielle, I've been meaning to talk to you about this in terms of when you were first thinking, and I know you mentioned that Obaid had essentially built the MVP, but how were you able to take what Obaid had in Botmock and build it into what it is today? Like I'm sure you went through a thought process. Like you didn't just build stuff, and it was very evident from when you launched Botmock V2 that you listened to your customers. But we all know that we have to be data guided, like Elaine said, not data driven. Uh, so there's certain things that you listen to your customers about, and there's certain things that you're like, maybe this isn't best for my product. So what was your thought process when building Popmonk?
When I joined, Obaid basically said to me, like, if we want to rip down everything we've got and start over, like, let's do it. So that was one of the first, like, good signs to me, even interviewing when I was thinking about, which teams I wanted to join. Um, just that kind of open, it just seemed like he really, wasn't the type of founder that would have that, issues letting go of control. I mean, you hear a lot about founding PMs, product managers, having to go through a lot of crap with um, trying to even get anything done because the founder is still so married to, their product. Um, to me, it was like the opposite with Obid. So right off the bat, I knew that, he was in this to actually, listen to the whole team's ideas. And that freed up a lot of just it helped me and the team feel free to actually open our mind to like these new ideas. So, as a designer, as a conversation designer, I had a lot of ideas for how to start prioritizing features. But ultimately, anytime Obaid and I were in a product conversation, we were like, this is super confusing. We need to fix this, or like, we need to add this. We've been getting a lot of requests for this lately. And then we would come to kind of a decision at the end. We would never say, okay, let me write up a ticket and put it in, and then we'll start, asking our devs to work on it. It was always, let me just go on. Like, I would say, let me hop on a couple of calls tomorrow with some customers, run a couple of questions by them, maybe a couple ideas, but, try to keep it open-ended so that we're not just confirming what we think is true. And then, and that's where we went. So all of V2 was sort of guided by that process. Like, Obaid and I, obviously, because we work on this day in and day out, we had good ideas for how to, like, what direction to go, but ultimately every decision we made had been previously confirmed by one of these like ad hoc calls. Because again, I mean, we were a tiny team of 5. We didn't have the resources to, verify and check everything with tons of data. It was more just like, let's get a pulse on what's going on. Let's do a gut check, and make sure that kind of like what we've decided, what we think is right, is like actually something that people are wanting.
Yeah, and then how did you go about? So once you, let's say, once you pushed out a feature, how did you monitor that feature? Did you use any specific analytics tools, or did you just talk to customers directly about those features that you launched?
Yeah, again, I mean, we tried to hire someone to help us monitor this stuff, but with a team that small, it really did become an exercise in balancing how much process we're trying to bake into our daily lives and how fast we're able to move. So I don't know, like, as I'm thinking back over the last few years, like, at some points I did feel like we were going too far into the, like, we're kind of slowing ourselves down a little bit by trying to be too methodical, too like bogged down with all these checkpoints. And then sometimes we were like not methodical enough. So we were always trying to really hone in on like the right system for our team and for our product team in general. Like, we didn't really have much reporting. Like, we didn't prioritize that as much as we prioritized simply talking to our customers, because we did have, thousands of customers, but we didn't have hundreds of thousands of customers. Like, we could still get a good read on the situation just by being able to talk to a couple like key people.
Yeah, and how big is Botmock? How many users do you have?
So we had
Yeah, just ballpark number.
yeah, like we had a couple, like around 5,000 monthly active users.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But that's the cool part. It was all subscription based, correct? Or most of it?
Yeah, it was all subscription. It was just a monthly, you sign up and pay monthly.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's 5,000. I would love that. We're not there yet at Alex, but we're B2B generally. We're actually trying to break into the self-service market, basically individual users, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole different ball game when this is probably something if our listeners are interested in. So servicing the self-service market is a lot different than servicing B2B. So that's one of the things that as a business you have to strategically choose and be aware that if you're going for both, go for both. But each had different sets of needs, and you have to make sure that you're prepared, right? And that's one of the reasons that we haven't really unleashed into the self-service market, because even if you have 100 people and let's say 90% of them aren't paying you just yet, just because depending on what model you use, you still have to service, you still have to provide some level of basic customer service, especially if you want them to end up being paying customers. And obviously that depends on what pricing model you're using, et cetera, et cetera. And I know Botmock also has a free tier as well. So I'm sure you have to field questions from customers that aren't necessarily paying, but this all creates some sort of drag that you have to contend with. So it really has to be a very conscious choice. Otherwise, you kind of get out of your skis a little bit and end up kind of losing customers because you can't support them quick enough. Would you say that was kind of accurate in your experience, Brielle?
Yeah, those were definitely decisions we grappled with. I mean, when I joined Botmock, we didn't have a free tier. So deciding to go freemium was a big conversation that first year. And then we did decide to go with that. And it was definitely the question of, can we support freemium as a team? You know, like, we don't have a customer service team. Like, I'm manning customer service. Our devs are manning customer service. Like, that's kind of how we function. So, so that's like, as you said, it's a trade-off between going for those higher paying but harder to close enterprise customers versus going kind of far and wide for a lot of adoption. I think any company grapples with that, and if you do decide to go far and wide, then you have to kind of thinking about funding a lot quicker too, so that you can actually handle that load.
Yeah, exactly. And what was your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge at Botmock, I think my biggest challenge, one big challenge was that balance that I mentioned earlier. I mean, when I joined, again, it was a team of 3, and Obaid, he's such a brilliant mind that he, had developed the tool with his own 2 hands. He had designed the UI. He came up with the product specs. He did sales. He was doing it all. And so he was very used to kind of that feedback loop of, what's the vibe on what our customers need and want? How fast can I code that up, and how quickly can we release that? And as soon as you bring a second product partner into the mix and more engineers, you need a little bit more of a process around like how we're prioritizing stuff. We're not just building stuff kind of as it comes onto our to-do list. So, I, as our product lead, then tried to implement more of like a prioritization process, which did help. But then at times I got worried that I was introducing way too much of a process and kind of slowing us down unnecessarily. So finding that balance was difficult. And you never really know if you've like perfectly struck it. It's never like, oh, like we're golden now. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic product manager dilemma right there. Because
Yeah.
you can ask Elaine this. I faced that when I joined. I joined Analyticsai employee number 9. We're 15 right now. And we're probably going to double by the beginning of next year.
Oh,
And
awesome.
it's a it's a constant struggle, right? You're just like, we can't do it all. There's stuff that's important, but you guys just signed a huge client and they want this certain feature. And I'm like, okay, well, at the very least, that feature fits into our product, something that we actually do, but I have all this stuff in my roadmap that I want to get done. But now it's be pushed aside because I can't say, hold on to that $1 million contract, right? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
if you're trying to get out of that primordial ooze that is pre-series A,
Yeah, exactly.
you just can't. I don't know. You basically get stuck between a rock and a hard place as a product manager, because it's not good product practice, but it's just, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And hope you get out of that primordial ooze at some point. It can actually really do what you want to do in a structured manner.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally.
yeah, yeah. Elaine knows that all the time. She used to be. She's. I think we got better at it, Elaine. Right? You used to get pulled in
Oh,
seven different
we
directions.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think we've become really good at, putting boundaries and trying to set up processes where it's like, no, let's funnel the work somewhere. Like, certain people should not be doing everything.
That was so true. Except it's hard to get our CEO, who sounds a lot like Obed, but he can do it all. He still does everything. I don't know how he does it. The man doesn't take a break.
Yeah,
But
I bet.
I've been holding off on mentioning this, but you guys recently got acquired by Walmart, which is amazing. Is there anything you want to comment about that acquisition?
Yeah, so we got acquired by Walmart last Monday, 2 Mondays ago.
Fresh.
Very fresh, hot off the press.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, basically, our team is relocating to the Bay Area. Obed and I and our head engineer, and then our other teammate is in India, so he is joining the team there in India. And really, like, this outcome has made all of our combined time really worth it. So we're really looking forward to like working with Walmart. Walmart's been a customer of ours, so it'll be cool to kind of see how things shift from having to kind of balance what we were just discussing, like B2B, B2C, all kinds of different customers with all kinds of different needs, versus really doubling down as an internal tool for Walmart and just diving super deep into like what each team needs, and then specifying, really shaping and molding the tool to work for that. So I'm really excited. I mean, I've never worked in a corporate setting before, so that's going to be a big change. Should be interesting.
Yeah, well, congratulations again, and I guess we'll be seeing more of each other then if you're coming to the Bay Area.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
wait, hold on a second. The Walmart is a presence in the Bay Area. I think
Wait,
that
you
was
Yes.
didn't know
surprising.
that, Fadi? Yeah, I used to take
No.
a ride share, like every day after work, and you'd like carpool with different people, and there'd always be someone who needs to be picked up at Walmart.
Nice.
I'm just surprised. I thought you were going to say when you said you're going to move, I thought you were going to move to Nebraska, right? Because they're based out of Nebraska,
I
I
think it's
think.
Arkansas, but
Arkansas,
yeah.
that's it. That's it. Arkansas.
I thought so too. But yeah, it's a Sunnyvale office.
I've been
No,
there.
you've been there, what,
Yeah,
shopping?
no, I told you. The ride share. Well, I mean, from the outside, it looks nice.
Yeah.
It looks like every other Sunnyvale office.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, uh, okay. Well, speaking of going back into the office, right? I know you guys, both of you guys, are very ingrained in the conversation design community. Uh, what, in your opinion, does a conversation designer need to do these days to succeed in this current environment? And on top of that, um, actually, no, you know what? Let's just answer that question and I'll follow up with the other one. So what do you guys think? Like, how do you succeed as a conversation designer? And uh, how do you essentially choose? Because I know we talked about uh, how we hire people, right? But at the end of the day, it's also about you as a whatever, as a conversation designer. This can apply to any kind of employee. How do you choose the right employer?
Yeah, I guess it depends on like what you're looking for. It's kind of like if you give like very generic advice to anyone. It's like, do you feel comfortable working in a startup and fast-paced environment? Do you feel comfortable, you know, having to be your own resource and like having to advocate for yourself very strongly, or would you prefer to like take a different route and go maybe with like a larger company and that maybe would have like more mentorship, more like resources, but the work would be like really, really, really like specific, really focused on like one thing, and you wouldn't really get that chance to branch out. So it's kind of like if you're in the job market as a conversation designer trying to decide, I guess, against like employers, I guess you have to know your personal preferences. Again, like going back to the interview process, if you're struggling a lot to kind of find that confidence within yourself to kind of claim that you are an expert in conversation design, you should definitely stay clear of companies that would put you as the sole conversation designer, because in that role, you really have to be really self-assured and kind of like be able to, you know, find your own resources and be your own, like be your biggest fan essentially, because you will not be getting a lot of direct feedback. You'll be getting a lot of questions from a lot of different stakeholders and team members, and you'll have to be explaining what you do like constantly, and maybe like that kind of environment is not really great for someone who is like just starting out. So I guess you really have to ask yourself like some hard questions of like what you're looking for and what your long-term plans are. Like, do I want to work in all kinds of conversational applications, or do I want to focus on just voice? Do I want to focus on just chat? Do I want to focus on a specific industry? Because I know some people are really drawn and feel really passionate about certain verticals like healthcare. Like maybe they just want to work in conversational AI in healthcare. So I guess you should really be, looking at yourself and what kind of interests you have.
Yeah, it's important to keep asking yourself, like, what gives me energy, what doesn't give me energy. And I think in this day and age, finding something that you feel excited about specializing in is really good leverage. Whether you decide I like product, so no matter what I work on, I just really want to be like creating products and managing products. Like to me, being in product is like fulfilling my dream of becoming like an inventor. Like to me, being a product manager is like a modern day inventor. Someone just like sitting around and thinking of cool things to build. Obviously, it's more nuanced than that, but like being able to be in product and working on like language based products is like my absolute just I can't even think of a better place that I could have landed for like my specific interests. And I say that in terms of like I started as a designer. I started as a conversation designer. I thought that was perfect for my interests, and I love doing that. But I began to realize that product interests me even more than design. So yeah, it was a matter of like going for the good vibes. Like when I was interviewing at much larger companies and at Botmock at the same time, I chose Botmock because of how I felt about who my boss would have been, which was Obaid, versus, at these other FANG companies who my boss would have been there, The name brand recognition can seem very enticing, but at the end of the day, like, just know that the shininess of that is gonna wear off really fast, and it's more about like actually how you feel day to day talking to these people.
Yeah, that's actually true because I left Deloitte to join NLX actually. So
Oh, really
the
nice.
yeah the allure and comfort of belonging to a big company that had provided a lot was very very tempting. And yeah, I just decided that I wanted to take a chance. Granted, it was a little nuts because I had just moved and bought a house So
Nice.
my wife just was not happy with me. She called me nuts. She didn't say that, but she was thinking. I could tell in her face. Um, but you
Well,
guys kind of just remind. Go
if
ahead.
I ever meet her, I'll let her know that you picked a good team to work on. It's clear that Alex is going places.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And kind of on that, you're mentioning about knowing what you want to do. For me, actually, because us as product managers, we're all about experimenting, and sometimes you don't know what you want to do until you actually do it. And I, after leaving the army, I went to grad school. I actually got a master's in international affairs, and I thought I wanted to do whatever government related stuff. But after one year there at school, I realized I don't want to be around these people. So I uh, I tried to pivot. It was kind of like, well, I might as well finish this degree, but I kind of want to use it to get a job in the private sector. And I could not find a job to save my life, actually, for the first 3 months. And then I ended up finding this unpaid internship in Jersey. I lived in New York at the time. I had to commute to Jersey. But the day of my internship started, the same day, there was a career fair at JP Morgan. And I decided I was just going to go take my chance at JP Morgan instead of do a unpaid internship. And that's how I ended up actually not in product management, but project management. And
Mm-hmm.
and over there, I learned everything you don't do at JP. Love the company, I really do. But it was kind of interesting because it was that intersection, that time when Agile was really starting to take hold, but people were still very much entrenched in their waterfall practices. That they did this whole Agile veneer, which a lot of companies still do, to be honest with you, where they just called stuff stories. They had stand-ups, and they didn't really have sprints. It was just this weird Frankenstein, and it just ended up not not basically. Let's put it this way: if the team was a startup, we would have failed within 6 months. But because we weren't, right, it took 3 years to actually release the product or project and their
Mm-hmm.
terminology we're working on.
Mhm.
Yeah, so basically sometimes you just stumble on things too. In my case, at least, and you just try to maneuver your way, which I don't recommend. But I don't recommend to anybody. But it's uh, it's just interesting how life kind of just pulls you around, and somehow you end up on your feet if you just try to make the right decisions or the best decisions at the time. Um,
Mhm.
anyway, but before we end the session, Elaine, we're hiring,
Mhm.
aren't we?
Yes, we are indeed.
Do you want to just give a brief description on what kind of role we're looking for?
Yeah, so we're currently hiring a few different positions right now, but specifically on our team, we are looking for a conversation designer. So again, what we do at Analytics, we kind of do all kinds of customer self-service. So it could be anything from an IVR. It could be a chatbot on a website, it could be chatbot on WhatsApp, like all these kind of different channels. Or what we do with Voice Compass is a multimodal mobile phone experience. So when we say we're looking for a conversation designer, we're really looking for someone who is like ready to charge into what multimodal design means and ready to explore omni-channel. So it's everything related to the things I just described and kind of, having like a good UX design foundation. And again, if you're ready to come for the good vibes, definitely here to welcome you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're also, just to add on what Lynn said, but this is not under product, obviously. We're hiring cloud engineers for AWS specifically. We're an AWS partner, and we're looking for front end engineers as well. So if you just go to Analytics.ai, just go to the careers page, you can apply there, or you can just reach out to me. It's FADI, Fadi at Analytics.ai, and I'll forward your resume and refer you. Uh, Brielle, how can people get in touch with you if they would like?
Um, let's see. My Botmock email is not a very good place anymore. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Brielle Nickoloff in the world, so you can find me there.
Awesome. Elaine?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, Elaine Anzaldo, or if you just type in Elaine in the Bay anywhere, like I'm sure to show up. So that's how you can reach me.
Oh yeah, the Twitter pitch. I forgot to do that. Yeah, you can also reach me on Twitter at IMA_Fadi. And obviously I just gave everyone my email. And LinkedIn, obviously. I am not the only Fadi Baaklini, believe it or not. It's not that common, but for some reason there's a lot of us online. So I guess it is. But I am the only one at NLX. I can guarantee you that one. Brielle, Elaine, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. We should do it again. You guys have a great night. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Fadi. Thanks,
Yeah,
Elaine.
thanks, Fadi. Yeah, great talking to you both.
Yeah.